Hello everyone and welcome back to the Coreco Couch. Now, who do I have on the couch with me today? I'm delighted to say that we have a very special guest in the dynamic, inimitable James Biggs.
Hello,
Hello,
Good
James.
afternoon to you. How you doing?
All right, how are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Always chipper. I rest at about a
You
9
are
out.
always chipper.
I rest at about a 9 out of 10
Yeah,
chipper.
I've never known you not chipper.
I think my wife would have something to say about that. But I'm sort
Maybe we should get her on this and talk
I
about
don't know
how
about
chipper
that.
you are.
She's not a morning person. I am. I sort of spring up in the morning like a dog with 7 tails, and she's like, "Could you just sod off until I've had at least 7 coffees? Maybe talk to me about 11. In fact, I'll just meet you at lunch.
Yeah.
We're both working from home.
Oh, God.
Drive her a bit mad.
So let me explain who James is. James is partner at the Employee Benefits Collective, or EBC.
Yeah.
And I am going to read this. Your primary goal, so I took this from your website, to take financial well-being and education to the world.
Oh, yeah.
Whether by using great and easy to use technology, via exceptional workplace education strategies, or face-to-face advice.
That sounds really good, doesn't it?
It's good.
Did I actually write
it's on
that?
your website.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And you also present EBCTV, which is a fantastic workplace well-being channel.
Yeah, as it says on my T-shirt.
Yeah.
So
How did you get into all that? So what was your journey to this?
by accident, but I've always wanted to be a stand-up comedian,
Right.
but never had the testicular fortitude to actually
You
go
can
and give
say
it a
balls.
try.
Yeah.
Okay. Never
Yeah.
had the right cojones to give it
Yeah.
a try. Was in a band, and I know you
Yeah.
have got that going
Yeah,
on
yeah.
in your life as well. So I'm happy being on a stage, and but I'm always the one that's first at the front of the queue. If there's should we get a presenter? Do you want to be at the front of the stage?
Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
do this? Can you do that? And so during the end of the last decade, I became aware that there was this thing called Pensions Awareness Day going on across the UK. 15th of September. Like most things now, awareness days are really important to push an agenda.
Yeah.
And the view was, for the people that set it up, that the UK was sleepwalking towards pension disaster.
Yeah.
So I saw them doing a double-decker bus around the UK, going to all these cities and talking about pensions, and I volunteered to help them. And so in 2019, I actually went with them. We had a branded classic VW camper van
Yeah.
with Pensions Awareness Week written on it, and we went to all these major cities, and I loved it. And so I thought, right, I'm going to volunteer and do this every year. Then the following year, COVID hit, and we had to cancel the roadshow because everyone was locked down. And so we thought, well, we'd want to keep Pensions Awareness Week going, so we did it as a live broadcast from a studio. And about a week before, they said, "Oh no, we're terrified about doing this as a live broadcast. You know, when we do it in the street, we're just talking to passers-by,
Yeah.
and you can kind of busk and ad-lib, and there's no pressure. This is different. You know, we don't know whether it's going to work or not, but we're going to live broadcast." And so started doing a live broadcast that summer, summer 2020, and thousands of people were watching. We used to bump into about, I don't know, 40 or 50 people an hour in the high street, and all of a sudden we had thousands of people watching these
Wow.
live shows. And so I did that for a couple of years with these with the guys, doing Pensions Awareness Week, and then it grew into something a bit bigger for the whole industry, and a light bulb went off when I was thinking, well, hang on a minute, rather than just talk about pensions, wouldn't it be brilliant if there was an opportunity to talk about wellness, physical well-being, emotional well-being, social well-being, financial well-being, technology well-being, cost of crisis, support and well-being.
Yeah.
And so I had this brilliant idea and said to the rest of my team, I'm going to do EBCTV. And they said, oh, that sounds a great idea. Well, let's start planning it. And I was like, no, let's do it in April. And they were like, but it's only February. And I said, well, the thing is, if we just do it, if we just choose a date and go and do it,
Just go and do
Yeah.
it. You learn on the job, don't you?
build it, and they will come.
Yeah.
And so terrifying doing the first live broadcast, but absolutely loved it. And then we pivoted from that to not doing it in a studio like this amazing. I love your couch, by the way, Monty. It's absolutely
Thank you
brilliant.
very much. We're very proud of our
It's
couch.
super. And but we then took it. We thought we'll take it to our corporate clients,
Yeah.
and we can turn it into a bit of an event and make it into a bit of a day. And then they give us a cool part of their office, like a corner of a breakout room or a boardroom or something, and then we'll actually keep the cameras rolling and record loads of extra new content. So we drop new content in about every 3 weeks from a wellbeing, all sorts of elements of wellbeing. So that's how I ended up doing this. And also during lockdown, I was working on a radio station. My local radio station is called Marlow FM,
Right.
which is the third smallest radio station in the country. And
Is that your radio?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Hi.
yeah. Hi. So I had the Wednesday night show 9 to 11 graveyard slot. I actually had to turn on the automation at 11 p.m. and lock the building up as I went home. There was no one else there. So I'm really comfortable in front of a microphone, and I thought, well, we'll give it a go, see what happens on EBCTV and the award-winning EBCTV, I should add.
The award-winning.
The rest is history.
Very good. Yeah, you are a natural. I mean, obviously, you come across really passionate. Is that your big passion? Is that education piece?
Yeah.
And how you got into the employee benefits?
Yeah, absolutely.
Stuff.
Well, no one chooses to do what I did,
No.
which I set off to be a trainee chartered accountant.
Oh, right.
Failed the exams because I was too busy playing bass guitar and being a bit of a rock star and treating my first year in work after university as like university but in suits with more money.
Yeah.
And so didn't really do enough study and failed the exams, went to see a recruitment agent and they said, oh, you should be in sales. You know, sort of saw all this and went, you should be in sales. And they sent me for 3 interviews, tinned fish, computer faxes and printers.
Tinned fish?
I know. It was Prince's tinned fish. You know, the tin pictures.
Right, Prince's, not any old. Oh, that's right. Not any old tin
good
fish.
ones.
Yeah, that's pucker.
Not any old rubbish. So Prince's tinned fish, Xerox photocopies and printers, which was a really big deal. They were being sold for a lot of money in the 90s, and the commission on them was massive. And then they sent me to this other interview, which was for locum insurance. So if you're a GP doctor and you go off sick, you are self-employed. You've got to fill your list of patients. So you have a locum, and you've got to pay for that locum. So you take out insurance to cover the cost of you being ill and having to pay for a locum. And so they sent me for those 3 jobs. I got the third. I got offered all 3, and I chose the one with insurance, even though I didn't know what insurance was.
Yeah.
I literally had no idea. I could probably spell the word just. I had no idea what it was. And it wasn't that. In actual fact, all the big bucks was being made when I joined that business by the people selling pensions.
Yeah.
And so they quickly trained us on pensions, became a pensions expert, January 1990. This is my 36th year of being a pensions expert.
Look at that.
I know, it's so impressive. Even when I say it out loud, I'm quite impressed with myself because I don't really stick to anything normally. You know, whatever I've done that's a good laugh, normally 2 or 3 years later on, I'm sort of morphed into something else.
Well, it's that passion that keeps you going, isn't it? I always say that about the mortgage market.
Of course.
One of the things that keeps me going. I love a challenge like you. I love to do different things. Yeah. But the mortgage industry is just...
You're a mortgage ledge, and I'm a pension ledge.
You're a pension ledge. You are a bona fide pension ledge.
Yeah, there's 2 ledges. 2 ledges on a sofa.
Right, I'm going to bring you back to something else you put on your website, which I really liked actually. And it says that my view, as in your view, is that people have disengaged with their own personal financial journey. What do you mean by that? And how are you trying to change it?
It's a really good question, because I think maybe the word disengaged is incorrect, because in order to disengage, you should have been engaged.
Yeah.
And actually, I think the biggest issue is that people aren't engaged. And I think, going back to the Pensions Awareness Week thing, I think people are sleepwalking towards the wrong outcome in a number of areas. We should all be saving short, medium and long term.
Yeah.
We should all be on top of our debt, whether it be long-term debt or short-term debt. We should know what our interest rates are. We should know what our credit score is. And I think generally across the UK, people aren't. And we're good people that try and help people be better at this sort of stuff. You and your guys do a brilliant job helping people secure the best rate of mortgage they've got and guiding them and supporting them on that whole really quite emotional and tricky journey. And thank you, by the way. Your team has just helped me do my own remortgage.
Oh, good.
Which has been amazing. Just shifted from Metro Bank to Halifax. Thank you very much, Coreco. And I'm in that space as well, trying to help the individuals get from A to B. And it might be A to B is a few steps. If we could just nudge people a step or 2 further towards some kind of level of financial confidence and knowledge and achievement and attainment, then I would die a happy guy. If I've helped a bunch of people in my life, you can put that on my gravestone. Liked bass guitar, follows Aldershot Town, helped a bunch of people, and then I'll do the Spike Milligan bit. See, I told you I was ill.
Yeah, I love that, by the way.
It's brilliant.
Aldershot Town, that's interesting. Maybe we'll come back to that. So do you find that the younger generation now, or the new generation coming up, are more inclined to engage with you than previously?
Really different group. So I'm talking about my two boys here, 27 and 23. They are super confident that they're right about stuff without actually knowing any of it.
Yeah, of course.
And I really love that about both of them. You know, if I've instilled anything in them, it's to be just sit up, shoulders back, chin forward, be confident.
Yeah.
And so I think they think that they know most stuff, but like almost everybody, they don't really. You're an expert on mortgages. I'm an expert on pensions and financial well-being. The guy that fitted our boiler is a boiler expert, but it means that because we focus so much of our brain effort into one thing, other areas around us are going to get overlooked. And there's a famous line, you know, window cleaners have got the dirtiest windows in the street because they're too busy cleaning other people's windows. Yeah. That isn't true of me and my pensions. My pensions are in good nick. But because you focus on something, it means you take your eye off something else. And by being busy human beings, busy with life, busy with work, busy with friends, family, and all the social elements of that, it's very, very easy to take your eye off the ball with your finances. I use this phrase about pensions, right? And you can tell me whether you're in this category. Have you got one pension? Have you got two pensions? Have you got four pensions? Have you got I don't know pensions? And we come across that all the time. And I refer to people's papers relating to their pensions at home as the pension shoebox of shame.
I love.
It's just the stuff. It is the place where you go.
It is, isn't it?
Oh, I've got this. Oh, I'm not even going to read that, and I'll chuck it in. I'll chuck it on the side. In fact, I'll tell you how it works in my house. Something will arrive in the post. Very rarely is anything that's delivered to our house for me.
Yeah.
But a piece of something will come through the post box, and it will have my name on it. And I'll open it up and I'll put it on the side in the kitchen. And eventually, my wife will go, "Whose are these papers here in the kitchen?" And it's like, it's only me and you in the house, and you know they're not your papers. So they move from the kitchen to my shelf in the cupboard in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And then they sit in the red in tray. I've got these 3 basket in trays, and they sit in there, and I don't look at them almost ever again. And every 3 years, I go through the pile, shred the stuff that's sensitive, and then bin the rest. And so we're terrible at reading anything that financial institutions send to us. I've just switched my mortgage to Halifax. They've sent a big wedge of stuff, not read any of it.
No.
And one of my colleagues who just joined us, she's about 24, Christiana, she's amazing. She was on one of our EBCTV shows before Christmas. And she's done this brilliant thing that we're putting out for International Women's Day in a few days' time about the 7 things a young woman should do with their pension. And she had not realised that they'd spelt her name wrong when she joined her first pension. And so when it came to moving it to her second pension, because this is a big thing in pensions, people have got multiple pots. She went to move her old pension into the EBC pension, and they blocked her because her name was wrong. They couldn't match her with her record. So the thousands of pounds that were in her pot, they couldn't release it because their record didn't match her reaching out and saying it's me. And they said, it's not you because your name's spelt wrong. And so if someone can't even read their own name correctly on a piece of paper and identify that's been spelt wrong, it's not a surprise that people aren't really engaging with anything to do with financial. And how many of us, right, if you go to do a transaction online and this terms and conditions pops up and it's like 14 pages long and you scroll through it, you get right to the bottom. It
drives me mad.
Have you read the terms and conditions? Tick yes. Of course you haven't. You literally ticked yes.
Yeah.
In the time it took to scroll through it, you ticked yes. If you'd read that, it would have taken you an hour.
Yeah.
They must know by the amount of time it took you from the start of the journey to the end that you didn't read any of that.
It's something we should be campaigning for. I raise it every so often where, exactly like you said, you've got, you're financially savvy.
Yeah.
But you've got loads of stuff from Halifax, a big bump. Yeah. And it's not just Halifax, by the way.
Yeah.
This is all lenders.
All lenders. We're independent on this couch.
Yeah. And people don't read it because it's written in language that's not readable. We know the average reading age in the UK is quite low.
About 11 or 12.
Yeah, it's 11 or 12. So if you can't put your terms and conditions on a single page or 2 pages in plain English, Then what's the point?
What's the point? And instead, because we're all terrified of breaking some kind of financial regulatory rule in not doing certain things a certain way, we just go the other way and put everything in and make sure that we throw the kitchen sink at it. And so in the end, you get papers and documents from financial institutions get pushed through your letterbox in packages the size of something that could kill a small pet. If your dog or cat happens to be walking past and it clocks it on the head, X pet, it will be like the parrot scene. It wouldn't go boom if you put 10,000 volts through it, because it's been killed by a financial institution with the terms and conditions.
I know.
Too much in the terms and condition.
I know. We hate terms and condition.
Yeah.
So on the EBC TV, what do you find is the most the content you get the best reaction from? And
anything with me in it.
What do people? I mean, obviously you're a very attractive man, so why wouldn't you want to watch you? But what does really sell?
Well, it's funny you should say that, because actually we can clock how many people are clicking on things.
Yeah.
And the number one watched video is the hello video from me on the homepage. But to be fair, that's because most people click on the homepage.
Yeah, well, that's the first one, isn't
click
it? Yeah.
that, and then they go into the library.
Yeah.
We did a review recently that looked at some of the most watched stuff. So we did a 5 top tips on budgeting. That was really highly watched, especially around this time of the year, because we're getting close to International Women's Day. We've got some great content for women and pensions. That's really, really topical. And wherever I go in this outfit, I try to engage as many females as I can and say, please watch this video. Scan this QR code, watch this video, and have a think about your own pension journey. Typical woman arriving at retirement compared to a typical man of the same age will have £100,000 less in their pension fund on average. And in order to combat that, women need to start working age 4.5. Which is illegal.
Wow.
Because you can't start work until you're of age, and so on. So that one was watched a lot, and we did one recently on burnout as well, and that seems to be a really big subject. Hadn't even heard the phrase burnout at work until about 4 or 5 years ago, and now it's kind of ubiquitous. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And people are fearful of it, and people are fearful that they've been through it and not really sort of diagnosed it and that sort of stuff. So it's a rich array. And also, I might just add, Stu from Coreco has been a guest on EBCTV on 2 or 3 occasions. So those videos have their own section in the middle, mortgage expertise. Each one's got a separate title. They're getting decent amounts of clicks as well.
And he did well on the clicks. I've seen it. He did very
well.
If you're watching Stu, he did
sitting
very
there
well.
going in, coming out, going in again, coming out. Someone's watched this. 72 people have watched this in the last hour. Oh, it's Stu. No,
it was a really good session. And what I love about your EBC TV is how, it's a bit like, I don't want this to come across wrong. It's like, the most joyous Saturday morning TV.
Yeah.
Where you can actually sit and watch it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And that's what you get across so well. Okay. Is that enjoyability, but simplifying what to a lot of people is pretty complex.
Absolutely. And I'm really glad you mentioned TV, because Saturday morning TV, because someone asked me to try and explain to them in really simple terms what is EBC TV about. So I said it's a kind of mix and a mashup of Netflix meets EAP, because EAP stands for Employee Assistance Program, and most companies have got them in the workplace, where you would lean across them if you needed counselling support or financial coaching or 24/7 GP. All that sort of stuff is captured in this sort of Employee Assistance Program. So it's like Netflix meets EAP meets Tiswas. And so I need to explain that. So me and Monty are of an age where we remembered there was a Saturday morning show on ITV, and it had Chris Tarrant on it, and the lovely Sally James.
Sally James, yes.
And it was a kids show, and there were loads of kids in the audience, but it was proper crazy. There was custard pies being thrown around. Parents were queuing up to be on it. They were in a cage on. You couldn't have this on TV now. They were in a cage on set, and every now and again, Chris Tarrant would just jump up. Young Chris Tarrant would jump up and throw an actual bucket of ice cold water at the people in the cage who had actually queued and signed up to be
humiliated
there.
Like that.
And they probably brought their kids along and said, "Can I be in the cage?" And they had this.
So have you thought about bringing the cage into EBCTV.
There's so many things that you can't do these days. And I've just got a funny feeling that if you put kids in a room, plus adults misbehaving, plus Sally James in a really tight denim waistcoat, which seemed to resonate with me as a young prepubescent male, seemed to catch my eye. And plus also, you're probably not even allowed to put a custard pie in someone's face anymore, because it would be there'd be something you could blind someone because it might have the wrong chemicals in it, and
maybe.
And also, should you be throwing buckets of water at people? Is that a good thing to encourage? Is it going to encourage poor behaviour and lead towards violence? Who knows? I would love to bring that chaos. But the other sort of chaos, I loved the chaos of Soccer AM back in the day. I loved the behind the camera stuff.
Yeah.
So when we do the live shows, I always make sure that the crew join in. So I'll say, hey, and we're back. EBCTV are back. Let's hear it from the crew. And they'll be like, woo, 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 behind the camera, which I really love.
Yeah, I like that.
And I've also got the odd catchphrase. So I had trained the crew during Pensions Awareness Week that if ever I mentioned compound interest, they would have to shout, "It's the eighth wonder of the world!" And I thought I just ruined someone's earphones shouting that then. So I would go, and of course the power of compound interest, the eighth wonder of the world, is of course over time your pension fund will grow exponentially larger than you thought, because compound interest is incredible.
Yeah.
So I had all of these catchphrases.
But that's such a great way of explaining something like compound interest, because most people don't really understand the concept.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Interest is the very nature of what you do, is being on top of interest rates.
Yeah.
What you would hope in a mortgage is that your interest rate is low.
Correct.
And you would get the reversing of compounding, because the lower the number, the lower the amount the debt would grow to if it was a reverse mortgage, like a equity release or something. But with pensions, you want that interest rate to be as high as possible, and you want the glide path between you and you retiring 40 years worth to give you compound growth.
Yeah.
And the power of that is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So how can firms out there who might be watching, or if there's anyone watching who thinks, "Oh, that sounds great. How do I get that? How do I get that into my business? How do you work with those businesses?"
So obviously we are both in the business of developing opportunity for people to use our services, right? So business development or sales, whatever we want to call it. So getting into corporates is quite hard. Being noticed by them for us is quite an important thing, because we're quite a small brand. And so a lot of social media activity, a lot of EBCTV stuff being pushed out there. And also EBCTV is within our gift, because of the way that we create the content, to encourage some companies to have a free trial. So there's a couple of free trials that people can use. There's a 7-day trial, and there's a slightly longer trial where we can give a generic pass. And I sort of try and say to companies, let's take the Pepsi challenge. Why don't you try it for a while and see if you like us? So, but before we did EBC TV, we would sometimes approach someone that was more mildly interested in the idea of engagement, and say, well, let's do some sample sessions for you and see what your employees think about it. And normally on the back of that, it can expand into looking after everything for them, because once you've created a relationship that's built around trust and delivery, and value for money, because we think we're pretty good value for money, then that is normally the start of the journey. But it's often born out of an employer thinking, blimey, we really want to deliver well-being. And there's 3 pillars of well-being: physical, emotional, and financial. And physical we've got covered, because we've got private medical insurance and a few other things. And emotional or mental well-being is really high profile in offices now. And actually the poor cousin of those 3 is financial well-being. And so we're both in that space. That's people's livelihoods and mortgages, because that's such a big part of people's spend each month. But also people getting their brain around, what does good look like for you? For you and your loved ones who are financially reliant upon each other. What's the right outcome for you and your partner on retirement? What's the right outcome for short-term and medium-term savings? What plans have you got? What savings have you got to meet those plans? And how are you in terms of some of the other chaotic stuff like debt, borrowing, interest rates, credit scores, and all that sort of stuff? Where are you on that curve? Is that something that you're in control of? Is it conscious? Are you having conscious conversations about it? So many people in the UK don't even talk to their partner about money. I had a good mate of mine, Joe Thresher, bless her, she's no longer with us. Joe was amazing. Worked with Joe before in a previous existence that I was in this industry. And Joe, once challenged a group of people in a room, and I remember her saying it, said, you lot, you're more comfortable talking about your sex life than your money. And I thought, wow, that is
true.
That is really, really close to the bone. And I thought, wow, are they going to respond well? And loads of people laughed.
Yeah.
And but it sort of broke the ice a bit, because we are terrible in the UK at talking about money, and financial difficulties can lead to, I think it's the number 1 or number 2 reason for divorce and or suicide. It's right up there as being a massive trigger. So I'm a massive fan of saying to people, make sure that you absolutely know where you are, because you can't get over there if you know where you're starting from. And absolutely make sure that you have open dialogue about this sort of stuff at home, because unless you've got a plan, you ain't going to get there. And I think most surveys and research done globally, here and in the States and at Harvard and all that, it will basically say if you've got a plan, you're more likely to get the outcome that you want. If you haven't got a plan, you stand almost no chance.
Yeah.
So having some sort of a plan, whether it be the plan to pay your mortgage down, to pay it off early, or to buy a second house and have a rental property or a holiday home, unless you've got a plan, you ain't going to get there. So for me, it's all about dialogue and thinking and writing stuff down, or putting it on a spreadsheet, or putting it in an app that does it all for you, but have a plan.
Right. So how have you found working with Coreco? Because obviously, and why has that worked for you?
Well, shall I tell you the story of how we even got to meet
go
you?
on.
Because and I'll tell you what everyone else does is they try to call you Coreco or Coreco.
Coreco. I like Coreco. That's
Coreco.
our Spanish.
That'd be the
Coreco.
Spanish arm. Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing. Yeah, I could do a bit of a joint financial well-being seminar with
Mexico,
Coreco in
Mexico,
Spain.
Mexico.
I love this. This is one of my favourite jokes. Underlay, good for carpets. But it's terrible, isn't it? Okay, ka-ching. Right. So a really good client of ours in the financial well-being space is Travis Perkins.
Yes.
Travis Perkins won't mind me mentioning them in the public domain like this. Paul Williams, who's the head of pensions and financial well-being, reached out to me and said, "You've got to meet Coreco." And I said, Coreco? No, Coreco. He said, you've got to meet Stu. So he introduced me to Stu, and I went, we need to work together.
Yeah.
You're bloody brilliant. We need to do stuff together, because when you are in the space of trying to raise people's consciousness about financial good behaviours, mortgages comes up for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Right now, more than any other time in probably the last 2 decades, it's pretty scary for people out there, going for a remortgage, coming from a rate that might have been 1 or 2%, suddenly having to bump up to 4 and 5. So it's super challenging for a lot of households at a time when there's a lot of other stuff going on. So cost of living crisis, supply and demand issues, inflation going up, all that sort of stuff. So challenging times right now. So Paul had reached out to me and said, you've got to meet Stu. That then overlapped with us pitching for a client that said, you need to do one-to-ones monthly. And we do this for our clients. We do pension and financial wellbeing one-to-ones. And they said, but as well as that, we want you to cover mortgages. And I said, well, I can talk about mortgages. I have actually done mortgage broking back in the day. I said, but I'm not really an expert. I'd like to bring in my friend Stu from Coreco. And so that led to a sort of a residency. Stu goes there once every other month or something. And then another client of mine in the city who you met then said, we're really interested in running mortgage sessions. And then another client of ours on the South Coast said, we're looking at running mortgage sessions. And so it's been a really brilliant natural partnership between us and Coreco to have like-minded people similarly enthused about being helpful, being present when people have got challenges and issues. And, I'm a fabulous advocate for how that journey has been. Stu grabbed mine, so to speak. I don't even know why I had my hand like that when I said Stu grabbed mine. Stu grabbed.
I'm gonna have to put like a little explicit E on this episode.
Stu grabbed my mortgage anxiety.
Yeah.
And he passed me on to his amazing colleague Danny. He calls him Disco Danny.
Disco Danny.
And Disco Danny has basically taken us through the remortgage journey. And I couldn't remember how horrible the journey had been in the past because I completely blanked out of my mind. Had a 5-year rate. It then bumped onto a 2-year rate that rolled on again. So it's about 9 years since I've actually done anything sensible like this. And so, you guys at Coreco have been amazing. And
thank you.
So it's natural fit for us to be in the workplace, talking to people about their concerns, and mortgages is right up there.
Yeah, and likewise, it's quite hard to find like-minded people, and it's your style which so resonates with us.
Well, me and you, two peas in a pod, right? Because we both like the sound of our own voice. I've seen
How
you.
Dare you?
How very dare you?
Dare you?
We're both naturally gruntled guys.
Gruntled.
We're not disgruntled. We're gruntled.
We're
naturally smiley guys. We're both massively into music.
Yeah.
We're both massively into helping people from a financial well-being perspective. It's almost like you're a brother from a different mother. So I'm loving this.
Oh, thank you. So before we end, and I ask all my guests this at the end, what has been the best piece of advice you have received over your years in the industry?
The best piece of advice, to me as a professional, or me as a person financially, or otherwise, I would say just keep being you, because this is just my natural resting position to be this smiley and enthusiastic. So just keep being you. I'll just slightly spin that and give you something that really, really wound me up, and it's inspired me ever since. I was once let go by a CEO. He said, "Your biggest strength is also your biggest weakness.
Right.
You're too nice. You're a hell of a nice guy, but it also means that you're going to be. You can't really make it if you're nice."
Yeah.
And it's totally stuck in my craw for nearly 2 decades, and I am determined to be successful and nice. I don't think they have to be completely different things. I lean in to the absurdity that you either can be successful or nice.
Yeah.
It must be possible to be both.
If there wasn't a big couch here, I'd give you a hug then, because that is how I live my life. And
Absolutely.
I had similar things.
Yeah.
Saying, "Oh, you got to be like this. You're too nice." Blah 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 blah. And I need to look at myself in the mirror at the end of the day and
Correct.
go, have I been an arsehole? Have I been fair? And that's what's important to me.
Correct. I'll give you an example of that as well. Some of our suppliers provide some of the services that we do, and they often say to me, "Can I mention this in front of the client?" And I'm like, tell the client everything.
Yeah.
Empty your kit bag on the table. Let them choose what they want. Don't worry about us. If they want extra stuff that we can do that they can't do, brilliant. But I'm never going to be able to look myself in the mirror if I know that I've persuaded you to not mention something so that I can sell it to them. And they'd have got it for free but make them buy it off me. No way, Jose. So
I love that.
Absolutely determined to be successful and nice. We should get T-shirts. Successful and nice. I love a T-shirt with a slogan.
I've noticed that. And on that bombshell, if you haven't checked out EBCTV, then please do. It is fantastic, and I know you will enjoy it. And we'll put your contact details in the show notes so they can get in contact with you.
Brilliant.
But thank you, James. I really, really enjoyed it. I knew I would. I'm really looking forward to this one.
Well, humour me. Give me a double thumbs moment. Everyone gives me double thumbs.
There you go.
Love
it's a double thumbs.
Love it.
It's a double thumbs moment.
It's a double thumbs moment.
There you go. Thank you very much for watching, and join me next time to find out who is going to be on the Coreco Couch next.